Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the MSU Extension Field Crops virtual breakfast. This is the first of the season. I'm Paul Gross. I'm an extension educator, and I'm going to serve as your host this morning. If you're joining us for the first time, this is our third year. We start at 7 o'clock. We start this on the 16th, and we're going to go every week. Thursday mornings until September 10th. We'll start off with one of our extension specialists, and then for the first half, and then the second half, we'll have Jeff Andresen, our ag meteorologist, to talk about the weather. So we really try to time these to the pertinent topics that we have throughout the growing season. Our first presenter, our first specialist this morning is Dr. Tim Harrigan from the MSU Ag Engineering Department. He's going to talk about some of the tough soil conditions that we're facing this spring. Before I introduce Tim, I'd like to invite all our participants to, if you have questions, to put them in the chat box, and at the end of Tim's presentation, we'll have a couple minutes for questions. So good morning, Tim, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Paul. I think we'll get right to it. I think 2019 harvest season, most people know, was pretty rough. We have various versions of this around the state, so I think it's important to have at least a short-term plan to think about how we're going to move ahead with planting this year. And I think most people are going to probably go with the equipment they have for the most part, and that could include just about anything. So I think we can, it's good to think about some of the principles about how soil dries and when it might be ready to move without, causing additional problems. I think, when we come out of winter into spring, we're pretty much at saturation. And that clearly we learned last year that saturation is not a time to do much work. So what we need to do is usually by internal drainage, remove some of that water. If tile drain fields move a little quicker, some are a little slower. Coarse drain soils many times dry a little quicker. But we need to get down toward field capacity, and that's basically when gravitational water has been removed. And I think you can visualize that if we had a pail of soil that was saturated with holes in the bottom and let the gravitational water just drain over usually a couple days. That's field capacity, and that's where we want to approach that. That's not really what we're looking for. That's actually quite a good time to create soil compaction because we have plenty of moisture there. We have airspace, not a lot of internal friction, and there's a real potential for more compaction there. So we need to dry it down a little more. We need a little patience here. We need to get down to 90-95% of field capacity. And that happens pretty slow in the spring, particularly the conditions we got now, cold, somewhat wet, depending on where you are. It takes a while to get it down. But when we get that, we get down to maybe 99% of field capacity. In the first few inches, we're okay for trafficking the soil. For instance, fertilizing wheat or whatever it might be. If we want to do any tillage, we need to get reach that drier level down to the depth of tillage. So if you're thinking, well, I've got some pretty deep ruts, I want to break those up and get till that depth, it's going to be a while to get there because it takes additional time to dry that soil by evaporation. So the bottom line, I think, is what we need to do is fill the ruts, level the soil, think about shallow tillage just to get a suitable seed bed. Think about a little longer term opportunities to get at deeper soil issues that probably is going to be later in the fall as we get after harvest. That's when our soil conditions are usually best for that type of thing. So, that's the recommendation, I think, is think about what needs to be done to fill the ruts, level the seed bed, and I think that's shallow tillage when we can get below field capacity and we're right for tillage. And I think most farmers know what is the right conditions for tillage as well. So, that's a recommendation for that. If we come down to tools, thinking about what do we need to do? I think there's a lot of options out there, even some of these vertical tillage tools that are mainly for slicing, and a lot of folks use these for managing residue. They're higher speed tools when you're moving quickly. they do a pretty good job. They can actually do a pretty good job of leveling and smoothing the field when the soil is dry. So it depends on what types of tools there are. Some are a little more aggressive than others and do a pretty good job, particularly if we're moving 5-6 miles an hour, and we can smooth things out pretty well. There are other tools that are more disc-like tools that give us a little more lateral movement. So if we've got tougher conditions, deeper ruts, more ruts, and we need more leveling of the surface, we've got some of these tools, such as this is a Landau. It's more of a disc-like tool. We've got others that give us more lateral movement of the soil so that we can fill those ruts and smooth them out. So, I think in this process, what are the tools? What are they going to do? We can think about the NRCS has the stir factors, the soil tillage intensity rating, to kind of give us some guidance on what that's going to do. How much soil movement we get depends on the speed, the depth of tillage, what types of tillage we're doing, those types of things. So, we have many options, including some of the more traditional tillage tools. So that's, I think the key is we need to think about filling ruts, leveling the soil, putting into place a longer term plan so that we can get with deeper soil compaction. That may be deeper tillage in the fall, maybe incorporation of cover crops and other things as well. So those are kind of a brief summary of where we're at. So if there's any questions, comments from you, Paul, or anybody else, I think it's actually pretty simple. It comes down to patience, and it comes down to look at the options that we have and try to develop a plan that's going to work for us.
So Tim, one of the questions I get is if I've got a field that has 8 to 10 inch ruts, how far down do I need to go beneath the bottom of that rut? Is there a strategy for like less than 6 inch ruts versus 6 to 10, 6 to 12 on leveling them out, and the type of tools you might use?
Well, I think the way I would approach it is if you've got deep ruts, I would, it all depends on the conditions we have. If conditions really improve, we'll have more options. If we're under pressure, that's a little bit different thing. So I think what we need to do is first of all, don't really worry about getting it to the bottom of ruts now if they're deep ruts, because they're probably going to have water in them. There's going to be some issues that we need to worry about. But fill those in, level them off, have a plan to come back in the fall with deeper tillage. And I think at that point, you're going to want to kind of identify the depth of tillage that you want to do, and think about getting an inch or two below the bottom of those ruts. Under better soil conditions, though, because in this time of year, it's going to be difficult to do tillage at the right soil moisture conditions and do things in a timely fashion, because likely the soil moisture is going to be too high to do that now. But do shallow tillage, 90-95% of field capacity down to 4 or 5 inches. Fill those in and have a plan in place to come back and deal with these more extensive problems later in the fall. After harvest is a good time, because that's usually when our soil moisture is depleted, at that depth, and we have more options and hopefully more time to deal with it.
Well, we've got a question in the chat box, Tim, about deep ripper. What about a deep ripper this time of year?
What we want to do is do our tillage when the soil moisture is right for tillage. And that's a little bit elusive answer, I guess, but farmers know when the soil moisture is right for tillage. And again, the soil is going to be drying from internal drainage, but also from evaporation from the surface. That's a slow process. To get down to the depth of tillage that we're going to want to do with a subsoiler is going to be a fairly long process unless weather conditions really improve. So that's why I say put that on hold. Get a crop started on a timely fashion. Put that on hold. Put that on the schedule for something that will be done in October perhaps, or after harvest in the fall, when soil conditions are right for tillage at that depth.
Okay, Tim, I have a question that I've had people ask. What about no-till? I'm not a no-tiller. I was able to get the crop off without messing the field up too bad last fall, but I didn't get any of my fall tillage done. What advice, what tips might you have for people that are considering no-tilling for the first time in some of those fields?
Again, I think the approach would be the same, and is to level the field and move ahead with whatever plan they've got in place that they feel comfortable with. They may have to do a little more tillage this year, getting a seed bed fit than they would like, but I think they can just. I don't see a lot that's going to be different if they want to implement a new tillage system and move ahead. I mean, it's a little bit of a challenging year for everybody, but that's something they can go ahead and think about doing.
Paul, I do have a question, and
Okay.
it has to do with non-tiled fields and whether or not they react differently than a tiled field will, because we have a lot of non-tiled fields in this side of the state.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we talked about the need to get down below field capacity, and tile drains are certainly going to accelerate that internal drainage that we need, and they'll be ready much sooner. And the fields will be more uniform as well. So there are real benefits to tile drainage. And actually last summer, I saw a lot of drainage going in. Undrained fields or naturally drained fields, fine textured soils in particular. If we have a field anything like we had last year, it's going to be a pretty slow process. We need some warm weather. We need some winds that are going to be drying the soil. We need some dry periods to get us to that point. So, those fields are tough. I mean, they're going to be slower. They're going to be more variable in the field. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, I think, unless we have pretty cooperative weather conditions.
Where there was no fall tillage, is it possible that shallow spring tillage may have more impact in making us feel like we are improving the seed bed rather than improving the environment for the seedlings?
Well, I've always been a proponent of a comfortable seed bed for the crops, and I think it comes down to there's a little bit of a sociological issue there. I think certainly if we're ready to go, I think we can speed things up a little bit by some shallow, judicious tillage, particularly some of these vertical tillage tools. I'm certainly not advocating tillage with these tools when things are wet, because they can compact the soil, but I know there are times when we can run those tools. We break up some of the residue, loosen the soil. It helps dry it. It does speed things up, but it has to be done carefully. And I think that there is a potential. I've seen advertisements in the past for some of these tools I see them actually going through standing water and being promoted as a tool that will dry the soil. Well, that's a dangerous thing. That's going to cause problems. But I think when things are just about ready to go, some shallow tillage, quick pass with some of these tools, I think is probably going to speed things up a little bit and let us pick up a day or two.
How long does it take for a new tile drain system to be fully effective?
Well, I think usually the soil has to settle, and I think it progresses over 2-3 years, I think, and most people have found it's pretty effective. So, but that depends on the soil and the depth and the number of things. But certainly even the first year is going to be much more effective than undrained land.
Okay, Tim, thank you very much. Our time's up. We appreciate your insights and input,